Hi guys, welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. And today I have the video that you may or may not be waiting for. You may not care, and if you watch it, you may wish that you had not watched it. But it is the one, yearly video that I have done all 3 years. Because for some reason, I completely fell off last December and January. So I didn't do any of my normal, yearly videos, except this one, which is my top 10 reads of 2023. Asterisk. So there's a debate on whether or not you should include the actual 10 books that you enjoy the most, regardless of how many are from the same author, or if you should do one per author. And many people do one per author. And that is so that this list is not boring to you, because if it was one per author for most people, because many people read, you just pick an author and you just read a bunch of the series, that happens a lot. And so to prevent it from being just one author the whole time, which is, even if it's true, it's a boring video. So keeping it to one per author. So if I read more than one book from the same author, I'm going to have to pick which one I liked the best. Now, if you want to see where I actually put all the books, not just one per author, then you should check out my live video of me tier ranking all of the books that I read in 2023, and that'll be sometime later this week, I guess. Jimmy did this, and I was like, "Hey, Jimmy, I was gonna do that too. Is that all right?" He's like, "No, don't copy me." He didn't. He was like, "Yeah, I don't care, because why would he?" So anyway, come do that, and you can "Nah, why did you rank that one higher? I'm mad at you." That's fine.
Well, excuse me, princess.
Whatever. Without wasting any more time,
Let's get down to business.
let's get it started. So there are no honorable mentions. No honorable mentions, because then it's not a top 10 list. It's a top whatever list. Got to get this started before Philip comes for the fact that it's a top 10 list. Philip has now declared war against numbered lists. It just has to be an abstract amount of favorites. If you rank them in any way, Philip kicks in your door and hits you over the head with a tennis racket. So anyway, at number 10 is going to be Boosh, Empire of Exiles by Aaron M. Evans. This is book 1 of the Usurpers, the Book of the Usurpers trilogy, and it just came out back here in November, October? Yeah, I think it just came out in November. Actually, several of these reads are from the back half of the year, probably because I didn't read a ton the first half of the year. I got really busy with school, was tired, whatever, make fun of me, that's fine. So I really enjoyed this book. I actually got an ARC, and I was taken by this book from the description, which has archivists. So there are people who work in this archive and it's very kind of Byzantine, Persian setting, and in these great vaults are kept a bunch of relics from the past, and I really like the magic system, which for the most part these specialists can tell the provenance of certain materials like bone or sand or bronze or ink. And they can, kind of talk to the object if it's made of that kind of thing. And then sorcerers are people that can manipulate them. And the whole world, everybody pretty much lives inside this one kingdom behind these salt walls that were built to repel the changelings in a war long ago. And so I really like this. The main character, Quill, is very petulant but determined to find out who murdered his buddy. And I actually really liked a lot of the characters, and I like the device at the beginning of each part where we see kind of a trial of the guy who tried to usurp the emperor, and he's waiting for his trial and his execution. His name's Rodolfo, and he may be my favorite character, even though he's only in those beginning of the sections. Anyway, I have a review of this if you want to check it out. I was also able to talk to the author, and she is super nice, and she also writes for a D&D idle game, and also has written some D&D books, so you should go check all those out. I am very excited for the next book. So yes, number 10 is going to be Empire of Exiles. So at number 9 on this list is going to be Boosh, A Touch of Light by Thiago Abdallah. So before continuing, you should know, just full disclosure, that Thiago is a very good friend of mine, so let you decide if my opinion is real or not. I mean, it is. But I read an arc of Touch of Light back before March, I think, maybe in March, and I really enjoyed it. It just felt different, with kind of a sparse writing style, and the themes of people who revere death and people who use death to stop the Earth from ending. I just really liked the culture clashes and the magic system that I didn't understand at all because there's a mystery surrounding it, but I was trying to piece it together, and I really enjoyed the battle scenes and the fact that there's Griffin Riders, and I enjoyed it greatly. And then, the reason it caps here and makes it to number 9 is before the second book, the arc of the second book was released in December, I reread it. I listened to it on audio, and Kevin Kemp's audio narration elevates this experience in every way possible. In fact, just like with Winter King, I think the audio is the best way to experience this book, and I enjoy the book even more this second time. So though I'm not including rereads on this list, I didn't say that, but I should have. I'm not including rereads on this list. I am not counting this as a reread because I read the book for the first time this year, and then I reread it in November on audio. And Kevin Kemp is, he needs to be one of those huge audio narrators because I loved everything that he did. Every single person has a different voice, and it's just phenomenal work. And so I think about the world that Abdallah has created here pretty regularly, trying to piece out the mysteries. I have a review of that here if you want to check that out. I really, really enjoy Touch of Light, and that audio experience is enough to have it leap Empire of Exiles and lock in the number 9 spot. At number 8, we have Boosh, Hawkwood's Voyage by Paul Kearney. This is book 1 of the Monarchies of God quintet. I just read this book. This was the last book that I read in December, and it cracked the top 10 list. So Angela, who hates everything, is in the comments going, what? Look, this book would be higher on my list if it wasn't for the weird sexy time stuff that's in it that is just, it's just explicit and not necessary. Like, it doesn't forward the plot, really. It just seems like it's there because Guy is writing a relatively gritty war fantasy in the 90s. And it is a gritty war fantasy. This is on the list because of the plotting and the military action and the political intriguing. Be warned, the characterization is not great. Paul Kearney's strengths here is not characterizations, and I found that actually a lot in some of the historical fiction that I've read. Like The Warlord Chronicles by Bernard Cornwell is an exception as far as characterization is concerned, but a lot of the other historical fiction that I have read is not really strong on their characters, largely because, like, the main characters have to be, these ubermensch who have to survive the things that are happening. I don't know. I guess they just don't spend a lot of time making really nuanced characters. Anyway, that's what it feels like here. It feels very much like a historical fiction novel, but there is magic and imps and homunculi. I have a review for this coming out soon. I filmed it. It's just not edited, so it'll be up soon. But there's a war within a war as the church tries to purge the magic folk, as the city in the west that is basically Constantinople has fallen to the Marduk Sultanate. And, they use this opportunity to try to grab control. Meanwhile, there's a voyage that is heading west to try to colonize what is basically America. And there's mystery elements. My favorite part is the fighting among the priests and the kings on who actually has any power, plus some siege action. I really, really enjoyed it. My enjoyment only dampered by just the need he feels to describe people's genitalia. And it's like, I don't need that. There is never a reason for me in any book to know that. Like, I don't need to know. I don't care. So, number 8, Hawkwood's Voyage. At number 7, and if not for the weird sexy stuff, this would be at where Hawkwood is. But it's Boosh, Ravencry by Ed McDonald, book 2 of the Raven's Mark trilogy. So I read Blackwing last year, and I reread Blackwing on audio this year, and I finally read book 2, which is Ravencry, which is just as good as Blackwing, but I liked it slightly less because the mystery and the characters, I didn't like the characters and what was happening. I didn't like the plot as much as I liked the plot in Blackwing. And I think there were fewer of the horror elements, which I really liked in Blackwing, but it was just as much of a thrill ride as the first book. It feels very much like a classic noir story set in this post-apocalyptic world. And I didn't review this one because, I mean, I have a lot of the same things to say that I had to say about the first one. But this is also, at its heart, kind of a romance novel, and it was less of that. There was some of that in Blackwing, but I think it was less of that than it was in this one. Regardless, it was really, really good. I got less of some characters that I wanted that were in it more in Blackwing, but regardless, it was short, it was gripping, I just tore through it, and that is why it earns its spot here. Alright, at number 7, before we get to that top 5, I have Boosh, The God Is Not Willing by Steven Erikson. So, I also read this book in the back half of the year, and I really enjoyed it. It was a slow start for me, as is every new Malazan book that has new characters. I remember the very first time that I stopped reading Malazan was at Midnight Tides, because, you know, you have this first cast of characters. Like, Deadhouse Gates was really hard after Gardens of the Moon, and then I got to Midnight Tides, and I was like, I don't, like, this is, so, and I just stopped. I didn't quit. I just read something else and then didn't come back to it till later. And so that's what I expect with brand new characters, because I'm like, why should I care about these guys? What if we brought back the people that I liked? But eventually I got used to them. It took about 150 pages to start really rolling for me. But after that, like, the back half of this book and some of the themes in this book are some of my favorite in the series. And I like The God Is Not Willing better than some of the main 10. But it's not my favorite Malazan book. I know that I will enjoy it more on reread, as every Malazan book that I read, but I am excited, really excited, for book 2. God Is Not Willing it takes place 10 years after the main 10 books. If you haven't read them, I won't really spoil anything else, but it deals with themes like loss of innocence, of the consequences of your action, of allowing rage to consume you, the inexorability of nature and time. And again, it continues to explore that theme of compassion, and I think here is one of the best examples in all of the books of showing that. My favorite character is not in this, though their shadow does loom large, and I cannot wait to be disappointed when they're not in the next book as well. But yeah, so at number 6, solid entry in the Malazan canon, God Is Not Willing. At number 5, all right, top 5 here on the list. At number 5, I have Boosh, Fury Song by Rosaria Munda. This is book 3 of the Aurelian cycle. I have not talked a ton about this book on my channel because when I read this, I was still struggling to make and put out videos, so I wasn't very active in the video space regardless. But I finished this easy 5 stars, the concluding volume of what was really a surprising YA trilogy to me. This series has a special place in my heart because it is the Russian Revolution meets Plato's Republic meets the frickin' Aeneid. And there are so many classics references in here, as well as dealing with the consequences of revolution. And Fury Song, I think more than any of the other 2 books, really, really highlights Munda's ability to write revolution and the long-lasting effects of that. It is not a clean revolution. There are consequences, and consequences that you don't foresee, and ones you certainly don't want. And it was really, really refreshing to see punches not being pulled and believable, realistic consequences coming from the decisions these characters are making. There were several shocks and gut punches that I was just like, what? One of them was telegraphed because, you know, people talk about it if there's a huge thing that, you know, breaks people. People talk about it a lot, and so I was able to spot one coming before it came. But there was one that I did not see coming, and that was more emotional for me than the one I did see coming that, you know, made everybody else sad. It was just really good. This one might have been my favorite of the 3 books. With book 2 being my least favorite, mostly because it's hard for me to get behind people rebelling against a regime that I like, even though they're the good guys. I'm like, but I like this regime. Stop rebelling against it. Like, I'm rooting for the bad guys. Anyway, Fury Song was fantastic. I am so excited about Munda's new series, which is like the Trojan War combined with Ready Player One. Oh, man, I'm so excited about that. At any rate, this is the sleeper hit that no one expected to make this list, but here it is, rocking number 5. I tore through this book, and this book may have been one of the books responsible for busting my massive reading slump that I was having prior to November. All right, so we've reached the top 4, and now we come to the authors that I read multiple books of this year and had to decide. And so at number 4 is going to be Daniel Abraham. And of all the books that I read books 2 through, actually I read books 2 through 5 of the Dagger and Coin series and Age of Ash this year. And coming in at number 4 is going to be...
Not quite my tempo.
The Tyrants Law. Book 3 of the Dagger and Coin series. So the Tyrants Law is my favorite of those 5 books. It is really the high point of the series to me. Books 4 and 5 are not my favorite, and that's mostly because where the plot goes, it does not go where I want it to go. That does not mean they're not good. It just doesn't go where I wish it would have gone, and so I was interested less in the events of the final 2 books than I was 1, 2, and 3. 3 reaches a crescendo of one of the most interesting characters in fantasy. Abraham, I don't know anybody like who crafts these put upon, just unique, relatable, understandable, and yet hair-pullingly infuriating characters. I don't know anybody better than Abraham. And that is where it hits its peak in this 3rd book. Book 2 is my second favorite. It's also really good. But book 3 is basically dealing with all the consequences of book 2. And it just stands out. Tore through it. Everything that happens is just like, I just loved it. I loved it. So Tyrants Law occupies the number 4 space here on this. All right. Top 3. In the number 3 spot is an author I have read a bunch of, not this year. This is actually the only book I read by this author this year, but in the past I have read several of his books, and that's going to be Adrian Tchaikovsky, and the book I'm talking about is, of course, The City of Last Chances. So I read this book also I read this over Thanksgiving break, so at the end of November, beginning of December. And actually this Tyrants Law may have been, I actually only have 2 books on this list that I read in the first half of the year, and Tyrants Law was one of them. So there's one more left. But anyway, The City of Last Chances it is definitely one of my favorite Tchaikovsky novels. I am partial to the App series, even though I haven't finished it, just because it's meant for me. I love the scope of the tale it's trying to tell. And Guns of the Dawn will always have a special place in my heart because Emily Marshwick is one of my favorite fantasy heroines of all time. But City of Last Chances has the best prose, the best writing that I've experienced from Tchaikovsky. It is just like a kind of a pulled back, piecemeal tale being told about everybody in this one city that's been occupied by these people who are doling out laws that are supposed to make everything perfect, and, the people doling those laws out are imperfect. And so we just get a piece of the story here, a piece of the city here, a narrative perspective there, and slowly, it is kind of daunting at the beginning, as I have no idea what's going on, but I stuck with it, and I trusted Tchaikovsky because I like him as an author, and slowly everything started to make more sense, and the sum of this book's parts are absolutely, absolutely brilliant. It's such a fantastic book. It is slow, which is why it's getting a bunch of 3-star reviews on Goodreads. Whatever, okay, it is slow, that's slow. If you don't like slow books, don't read it. Don't read it if you don't like slow books. Everyone's told you it's slow. Why would you do that? Anyway, I think it's fantastic. One of the areas of the city is one of the most genuinely creepy things that I've read in a fantasy book. I absolutely loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Went out, sang its praises. If you missed the review, it's right here. Go check it out. City of Last Chances, that I still, to this day, in this video, have had to stop for editing multiple times because I cannot stop saying The City of Lost Names. I can't. That's not the name of the book. It's The City of Last Chances. Whatever. All right, in the much, much awaited top 2, in my second favorite book that was read this year, and this, I read more books by this author than any other author this year, and that is, of course, K.J. Parker. Zara and I went through his novella collection, most of them this year, and I also reread Blue and Gold, I reread Purple and Black, and so I think I read almost every novella Parker has this year. So I've got like a dozen books by Parker, and I had to pick my favorite. Now, some of you may be wondering, what? Parker is number 2? Parker is indeed number 2. But out of all of the books that I read, this is the other one I read in the toward the beginning of the year, and that is Boosh, The Company, and I read this in February. So The Company is a standalone. It is about a former band of military friends. They were line breakers, meaning they bust open shield walls, and they've retired and have gone to this island to kind of colonize it. And there's a lot of logistics on what it takes to colonize an island. It's very boring. There's a lot of stuff that is very, very boring. But what is happening is not. It is not a book about the plot. Like this, there isn't a plot. Like there isn't one. For me, it is a character study of 5 people who used to be friends, a study of like why people stay friends, a study of fear, loyalty, selfishness, and the people on this island are so monstrously human. You can see it is a harsh mirror that it holds up to society on how just bad we can be as humans, like even without, special powers or the ability to wave our hand and, burn an entire village. Some people are just rotten. And that study here just creeped me out. And I think about The Company all the time. But it isn't for everybody. Like I said, it's boring. But I absolutely loved it. It lives in my head all the time. I think about it. Number 2 easily would have been my number 1 if not for this latecomer here nearing the end of the regular season. And so that leaves me with number 1. And I am surprised that this is here. I am surprised that The Company didn't take everything. I read a lot of good books this year. Like I said, I read like 12 Parker books. And I'm sorry if you follow me for fantasy and science fiction, because it's not even a fantasy book. It's not even a fantasy book. It is historical fiction. And that's going to be Boosh, Augustus by John Williams. So Augustus may be one of my favorite books of all time. And that is because I am the perfect audience for this book. My favorite K.J. Parker novella is Purple and Black, told in epistolary format. And I really like books written in letter format because there's just something about the lack of knowledge that you have when people are writing letters and the revelations that come from it. Like, you can't read inside their head. You can only read what they've put on the page. And I really like that. And so Augustus is a historical account of the Emperor Augustus in the 1st century, end of 1st century BC, beginning of 1st century AD, and his rise to power as a boy and his rule of Rome. And it is told entirely through letters of the people around him. Part 1 is his rise to power, so it is very historically based. So it can be definitely confusing if you don't know anything about the time period that it's in and kind of the stuff that happens. But you still get this just wonderful character study that John Williams has done here. And then part 2 is about his governance, and it's just tragic between him and his family and what Augustus has to do to rule. And it just says so many things about the human condition and about how art is important, and so many different kinds of love and family and the bonds there, and sometimes the hypocrisy that you have to engage in to rule, and standards that you set that you may not meet but that you should strive for. Imagine if all of us well, I'm not going to be able to be perfect, so I'm just not even going to try, and I'm going to be awful. That's terrible. Like, gotta have something to strive for, even if we don't hit the mark. And Williams's prose is gorgeous. I don't understand how he's such a good writer. I love the way he tells a story. Now, this book, again, just like the last one, not for everyone. This book was enhanced by my love of Roman history, my love of the letter format, and my love of John Williams' writing. And that trifecta just blew me out of the water. There hasn't been a day since I read this book that I haven't thought about stopping what I'm doing and rereading it on audio. I used audio and read it. I did both, and it just blew me away. It absolutely affected me beyond what I thought a, not fantasy book could do. This here, it beat out John Williams' other book, Stoner, which I also really loved, but I only connected with Stoner in the latter half of the book. The first half of the book did not connect with me as much, even though it was beautiful. And so that is why Stoner, like, there's just not even though I'm a teacher, there's just no way a book entirely about Rome, written in this gorgeous style, there's just no way it could not top out Stoner. And so though I loved Stoner, because I love John Williams, Augustus has to be the emperor of this list and take that number 1 slot. So, guys, that is it for me. That is the top 10 books that I read this year, asterisk only 1 per author, but that's just to stop it. It would just be boring, because I really, really enjoyed several of the Parker books I read, and as well as Daniel Abraham. Anyway, for a full overview of all those books, come check out my tier list video that'll come out, it'll be live later this week. So, what was your favorite book that you read? And if you have trouble naming one, give me your top 3. Tell me down in the comments what your absolute favorite was. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, information about my Patreon and Discord is down in the description. And don't forget to always keep turning the page.